If the Cardinals defense wants to live up to the hype, then Stanquan Clark must have a bounce-back season.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? And welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. We're continuing along in our off-season position preview series, and today it's all about the linebackers. This group has a ton of potential. I'm going to tell you about the defense's unsung hero. Could this be the ultimate breakout year for a specific vet? And one of the leaders of this unit is fully healthy and will be asked to play an even larger role in 2026. And that's where we're going to begin today's show. When you start to preview the linebackers position, you realize that all of the projected starters for this position group are going to be asked to take another step forward. And it starts with Stanquan Clark, who is one of the best players on this defense, but you lost a lot of production from 2025 and honestly the past couple of seasons because TJ Quinn, multiple year starter, one of the leaders of this defense, is no longer with the program, graduated, went to the NFL. So Stanquan Clark is going to be asked to step in to that middle linebacker spot and take a step forward. Now, it's worth mentioning that for the three segments on today's show, we're going to break it up by position. So this segment, we'll talk about the middle linebackers. Next segment, the weak side linebackers. And the final segment will be that star position, the linebacker safety hybrid. Now, the middle linebacker, often known as the Mike, I'm not going to go into insane detail, but the MLB is playing in the middle of the field. Oftentimes, the quarterback of the defense asked to do a lot of different things, defend the run, but also drop back into coverage. And Louisville is asking Stanquan Clark to do a lot in 2026 and take a step forward. Now, I think that this is going to be a bounce-back year for the Cardinals star linebacker. Let's rewind the clock about 12 months when we previewed this group last offseason and talked about the top 15 player rankings where Stanquan was towards the top of that list. I thought 2025 was going to be a money year for Clark, meaning that if he lived up to expectations, then he would go to the NFL draft and not be with the Cardinals in 2026. And unfortunately, he got hurt in the second game of the season, had a severe lower leg injury, and the preliminary thought was that he was going to miss the rest of the 2025 campaign. That didn't end up being the case. He did make a return later on in the season, but you could just tell he wasn't 100%. So decided to come back to school and bank on a season of being fully healthy. So that's the caveat here, is that he does have to stay healthy. But if he does, you know how talented he is. You know he's one of the best players on this Cardinals defense, best player on the team in general. He was due for a breakout year in 2025 after being a rotational linebacker immediately as a true freshman. And then in his first season as a starter, had 76 total tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, 2 passes deflected, and no secret as to why he was theoretically going to take another step forward and play his way into being, I think, a high NFL draft selection. So it's pretty justified to believe that he's going to take another step forward in his development, because don't forget, he's still relatively new to the position. When the Cardinals started to recruit him out of high school, he was listed as a safety on his prospect profile. Now, at the end of his high school career, made the full-time transition to middle linebacker, but that's not a position that you can pick up immediately and succeed at an extremely high level. Like, it just takes time. And just the fact that he was able to step foot on campus and play immediately as a freshman in a rotational role just speaks volumes to his talent and his potential. 6'2", 215 when he got to campus. Now he's 6'3", 240. So prototypical size for an NFL linebacker. He's a 3-down guy who's going to be on the field pretty much at all times when he's healthy. You know how good he is. You know what he can do on the field. But now the difference is Louisville's going to ask him to do what he can do for all 12 games, or especially the games that matter the most. Like, okay, we know what you can do. We just need you to show us on a consistent basis. Not to mention losing TJ Quinn, you're losing one of the leaders of your defense. You're losing the quarterback of your defense. So not only are you asking Clark to take that step forward on the field, you're asking him to be more of a vocal leader too. Of course, you have Clev Lubin back. You have Cohen Intringer, the captain of Iowa's team last year. He's transferring into Louisville. Some others will likely emerge too, but Stanquan Clark is going to assume more of that leadership role than he ever has in his Louisville career. Now, from all accounts, Clark had an incredible spring. That's awesome to hear. A, it shows you that he's fully healthy, and B, just kind of reminds you that, hey, look, that severe lower leg injury isn't going to derail his progression. Like, he's going to take another step forward in his development. A guy that can cover sideline to sideline, has insane closing speed, insane athleticism for his size. But just, again, I don't think it's you're asking him to, well, yes, you are asking him to get better, but it just seems like you're asking him to be more consistent. Like, you need that reliable production. He's probably going to take over a good portion of Quinn's production from the past couple of seasons. Mark Ivey's defense, who Mark Ivey's been with the program for the past couple of seasons, going back to the Satterfield era, but now he's calling the plays. Cardinals defense is going to be more aggressive, especially around the line of scrimmage. What does that mean for guys like TJ Capers, who we're going to talk about next segment? What does it mean for Stanquan Clark? Very, very valid questions, but my prediction is that Stanquan is going to lead this team in tackles. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you could see Clark get to that triple-digit number. He could get to 100-plus tackles if he stays healthy and if he has the season that I believe he can have. It's just a matter of consistently producing and just taking another step forward in his development, becoming even better of a run defender and even more elite in coverage, because I think he showed in his first couple of seasons in the Ville that he's pretty solid in coverage. Forces quarterbacks to make tough throws into tight windows. Like, it's not easy to go up against Stanquan Clark on the other side of the line of scrimmage. It's just a matter of A, staying healthy, B, becoming more of a leader, making sure the defense is on the same page. It seems like in years past, I'm not saying that this was an issue because of TJ Quinn, because I don't think it was, but it just goes to show you that communication is key. When the Cardinals struggled defensively in 2024, most of it was because you saw guys looking around, not really knowing where they were supposed to be or what their assignment was, and the miscommunication made them vulnerable to giving up the big yardage plays, in which they did more than we want to admit or discuss. But anyways, Stanquan Clark is going to have a bounce-back season from the injury last year, and I think that he's going to. And if/when he does, it just is going to allow Louisville to get closer and closer to living up to the hype defensively heading into the season. Because on paper, this should be, emphasis on should, be the best defense that Jeff Brohm has ever had from a talent perspective. Now, looking at others in that middle linebacker room, it's hard to predict the depth chart because you've got multiple players with positional versatility. So on the inside, you got guys that can play the Mike, they can play the Will. I think that Caleb Matelau is going to be one of the backups at Mike. 6'1", 225 pounds, redshirt freshman from Bradenton, Florida. You watch the tape and you're like, oh goodness, this guy jumps off the page. He jumps off the tape. And he had a solid spring. Now, he hasn't played yet for the Cardinals, so There's a little bit of unknown, right? Like, I think you've got quality depth. You got a lot of talent in this room across all three positions, but specifically on the inside, there's just not a ton of proven college production. You're just banking on the talent and the upside, especially with a player like Caleb Matelau, who was really good playing high school ball in Florida, a little bit underrated, overlooked because of the sheer amount of talent in that state. Matelau, I think, is your backup MLB. Player that could play at the mic, could play at the will, is also a linebacker from Matalau's high school class, and that's Cameron White, who is from the Sunshine State too. 6'1", 235-pound redshirt freshman, had one tackle in 2025, and that was against Kentucky in the Governor's Cup. He played at outside linebacker in high school, but I think has the skill set to be able to move more inside and play the mic, but could play the will as well. But starting at the weak side linebacker spot this year is likely going to be TJ Capers. Could this be the ultimate breakout season for one of the highest ranked signees in the Louisville football history? We'll discuss. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. Since 1986, the game has been creating classic college hats that fans are proud to wear, whether you're an alumnus, current student, season ticket holder, or simply someone who never misses a game. A great college hat is more than just apparel. It's a way to represent your school wherever you go. This year, the game is celebrating its 40th anniversary by giving fans a chance to save on some of their most iconic college hats. If you've been thinking about replacing an old favorite or adding a new one to your collection, now is the perfect time. I'm super excited to go to games this season at Cardinal Stadium, but you know those games during the day in the months of September and October, there's not a lot of shade, so it gets hot. It gets really sunny. That's why you need to take advantage of the opportunities with the game. Not only are you going to be able to have some shade, but you're also probably going to be asked a lot of, hey, where did you get those crazy, incredible hats? And the answer is the game. With hundreds of officially licensed college hats to choose from, you'll find the perfect fit for game day and every day. Don't miss this chance to celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off your entire order. Visit thegamecaps.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's thegamecaps.com. With the promo code LOCKEDON, celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off. But don't wait. This anniversary offer won't last forever. Be sure to get your daily Cardinals fix completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonlouisville.supercast.com to claim your free trial. Talking about the main storylines for the linebackers position in today's preview episode, and I think that the main storyline is Stanquan Clark, and the Cardinals are going to ask him to take another step forward. If Louisville wants to live up to the hype defensively, then Clark has to have a bounce-back season. I would argue that Louisville needs an ultimate breakout year from Capers, even more so than they need a bounce-back season from Stanquan Clark. Now, you need both. Let's be completely honest here. But Stanquan, who was already a starter, is going to take that middle linebacker spot left by TJ Quinn. That means somebody has to fill Stanquan Clark's position, and now is the time for TJ Capers to have an ultimate breakout season. Now, he's heading into his 4th year with the program. However, I feel like it's kind of misleading to say that because you have to factor in the context. So let's look at the timeline. TJ Capers was originally a 5-star in the 2024 class. And ultimately, he reclassified to 2023, where it was made known immediately that he was going to redshirt his freshman year in 2023 and rehab a pre-existing injury and just get into the college program, get into the strength and conditioning program, the weight room, learn the playbook, and just speed up his development. Well, that would have been his high school senior season. So as a freshman, even though he redshirted, that was still supposed to be his high school senior season. So in 2024, as a redshirt freshman, technically that was supposed to be his true freshman season. And in 2024, he had 6 total tackles. Most of his production was early on. Like, he had the interception in the game against Austin Peay, had 2 tackles against Boston College. Just really didn't play much of a factor. And I think that most of that was because you had some other players on the depth chart that deserve more playing time. And then in 2025, saw his role grow even more. 46 total tackles, 1 pass deflected, had 1 interception, but that interception was perhaps the most important defensive play of the season, that shoestring catch against Miami where the Hurricanes were down by 3, but they were driving. And it looked like they were on a collision course with either tying the game or taking the lead. And TJ Capers made the play of the season for Ron English's defense and gave Louisville that historic victory. Miami native was able to help Louisville upset his hometown team down in Coral Gables. So 4th year in the program, but it's really his 3rd season of playing. Now, TJ Capers is one of the highest ranked signees in Louisville football history. And I think one of the main questions that everyone has been asking since Capers committed is, what is his role actually going to be? Because at, what is he listed at now? 6'2", 225 pounds. He's a player that kind of played all over the place in high school. Close to the line of scrimmage at edge, as a pass rushing outside linebacker, also played as the Mike. Like, a player that super talented, you could use in a variety of different ways because he's just that good. Well, at Louisville, in the ACC high D1 Power 4 football, you kind of question, okay, is he a tweener? Because he's not really large enough to be a traditional defensive end, but is he good enough in coverage to play as an inside linebacker? And it seemed like Louisville determined early on that, hey, he's going to be an inside linebacker. It was just a matter of developing him and allowing him the time to improve his game and just kind of wait, because you had some other players, like I mentioned, ahead of him on the depth chart. Well, the time is now for a breakout season. And Louisville needs him to have that ultimate breakout year. They need him to wreak havoc. They need him to be that player that they brought to Louisville, right? Like, the player that Louisville went out and got was a guy that was just a walking mismatch. You could use him in a variety of different ways at the line of scrimmage, in coverage, in the middle of that defense defending the run, but he's fast, athletic, strong, a blend of all 3, and just a player that opposing offenses just have nightmares about. And Stanquan Clark saw the field early on at inside linebacker, but I think that it was just going to take some time for Capers to find his role, because kind of questioned where he was going to play. Well, here we are. And he's likely going to start at weak side linebacker. Again, I'm not going to go into incredible detail, but the weak side linebacker, often known as the Will, is kind of, simply put, usually lined up on the opposite side of the tight end in this new era where you're running different formations, whether it's a tight end on both sides, no tight ends. Basically, the Will lines up on the side that has the least amount of offensive personnel, so asked to play more in coverage than the Mike is, but you have a key role in defending the run as well, usually on the other side of the field. But anyways, Capers, I think you're going to use him more in coverage this season, but I think Mark Ivey's going to have an opportunity to use him in a variety of ways. Now, backing up Capers, I think that the potential second string guy is Trent Carter. Trent Carter is from Jacksonville, Florida, 6'3", 225 pounds. A guy that, when we talked about the signing day class, I think Trent Carter was one of the players that I was higher on in the class. Brian Smith, Locked On Podcast Network national recruiting analyst, basically was like, look, he's coming from a school that usually develops pretty solid talent. And getting a player from the school, you know that he's likely going to be able to arrive in the Power Four. And it might take some time for him to get to a spot where he is contributing regularly, but once he does, can be a very good player. Now, last year, only had one tackle. He had a tackle against EKU, and he also had a sack. Had a sack against EKU, and a tackle against EKU, and a tackle against Bowling Green, but that's it. So Trent Carter going into his redshirt sophomore season, and he's continued to develop. Had a solid spring. Seems like a player who is going to be able to shine in coverage, and he fits into that category of very talented player with high upside, just doesn't have the production yet. So there's an automatic question mark backing up TJ Capers. Well, there's another player that could be involved in the mix, and that's Jacob Smith, 6'4", 235 pounds, transferred in from Kentucky. He's the brother of Gerard Smith II, who we talked about on the interior defensive line position preview and the edge rusher preview. But Smith, kind of like Trent Carter, doesn't have a lot of college production, had one tackle for Kentucky in each of the past two seasons. But he's going to be a guy that could be involved in the equation at that weak side linebacker spot, along with Cam White, we talked about in the first segment. So you've got two players that are projected starters on the inside that really talented, just being asked to take another step forward, and the depth is really talented, and there's high upside, but just not a ton of college production at the moment. That's not the case for the star position. There's a lot of college production, both in the two deep and beyond, at that star outside linebacker safety hybrid position. And that's where the unsung hero of the defense plays. We'll tell you who it is. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Global, covering your team every day. Support for today's episode comes from Wayfair. Your home should feel like your home. And sometimes it doesn't take a complete renovation to make that happen. It just takes finding the right piece at the right price. Whether you're refreshing one room or updating your entire space, Wayfair helps make creating a home you love feel more attainable. Wayfair makes it easy to shop for furniture and home essentials across every style and budget, with everything from decor and lighting to storage, seating, rugs, and more. I just moved into a new space, and one of my top priorities was transforming my recording studio, both from a video standpoint, but also audibly. And Wayfair made the search painless. I was able to find some pieces of furniture in my budget, and they were super easy to install. Talking about minutes to put together some of the pieces of furniture. So if you're ready to upgrade your home for way less like I did, head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home and get your space ready for way less. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Card Nation, thank you so much for making Locked On Global your first listen of the day. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment in the YouTube section below. Both are great ways to help the show continue to grow. Also, don't forget the show free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. After today's show, we'll have 2 more episodes through the week as we conclude the month of July. We'll talk about the men's basketball exhibition game in the Bahamas on tomorrow's show. And then Thursday will likely be the cornerbacks position preview. And then as we get into August, we're going to be, in a full schedule of content. So just want to give you a heads up on scheduling. If you're an everydayer of the show, then you know I'm a huge fan of Antonio Watts. I think he is the unsung hero of the Cardinals defense, especially in 2025. And I think he's the ultimate X factor for the unit in 2026. Now, one of my hot takes last offseason was that I thought that he was going to be an all ACC caliber player a season ago. And I thought that he was. I thought he was good enough to land on those lists. I think he ended up an honorable mention, but took a step back in total tackles with 42. I think that's because he had a season-ending injury at the end of last season, but had 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, recorded all 3 of his interceptions in his college career last season, had 3 passes deflected as well. I think the 6'2", 225-pound native of Columbus, Georgia, is going to take yet another step forward in 2026. I think being able to retain him was the most underrated victory of the offseason because just what he was able to do. He's a Swiss Army knife on defense. You can, deploy him close to the line of scrimmage, and he's strong enough and disruptive enough to defend the run and also come off the edge and get after the passer, but versatile enough to be able to step back in coverage and go step for step with the tight end or even an opposing wide receiver. Had an interception last year against Miami, that over-the-shoulder catch against the Hurricanes. Had an interception at Pittsburgh against Bowling Green. Really, really solid season for him that I don't really think that the stats really did justice. And he is, I think, honestly, my favorite player on the Cardinals defense because he just doesn't get the credit he deserves. And having him back at that star position, which is the outside linebacker safety hybrid, a player who's versatile enough to where you can use him all over the field. And having him back is going to take this defense a step closer to living up to the hype. Now, here's the thing. Unlike the inside linebacker spot, you've got some proven production in this room. The first player is Blake Ruffin. Blake Ruffin is making the transition from traditional safety to outside linebacker and to that star position. Now, Ruffin actually got the first team reps at star as Antonio Watts has continued to work his way back from that injury at the end of last season. So Ruffin was the first team star for a good portion of the spring and looked pretty solid playing that role. Now, Ruffin is from the Ville, played at Trinity High School, started his career out at Eastern Illinois, and 2023 was a second team All-American, according to the Associated Press, and received various all-conference honors as well. Got to Louisville, didn't really play much of a factor in the past couple seasons, had 8 tackles in 2025. Most of those tackles against non-con opponents, EKU, Bowling Green, 6 of his 8 tackles against those 2 teams. But he's now in a new position that I believe fits his skill set better, and he could be your backup at the star position. Or it could be an old friend. Ben Perry is back with the program. Talk about an addition coming out of left field. You didn't see that coming. Ben Perry, multiple-year starter for the Cardinals for 3 seasons. 43 tackles in 2022 and Scott Satterfield's last year, 56 tackles in 2023 and had 4 passes deflected and a sack. 2024, 29 tackles, a pass deflected, a sack, and a forced fumble, but ended up transferring to UCLA. Now, he didn't play in 2025, and the 6'3" redshirt senior from Chicago has opted to finish his college career where it all started in the ACC, playing for Jeff Brohm's Louisville Cardinals. So having a player who knows the defense, knows what is expected by this coaching staff, and understands the level of play too, like if he's your 3rd string player at the star position, that's just an insane luxury for the Cardinals defense. Because it feels like in years past, like you've had solid top end talent, but you might have been lacking in the depth department. not with the star position this year at least. You've got production, experience, and versatility. So that's where you're like, okay, well, you can rotate guys in and out. If Antonio Watts, like you want to protect him early on against Villanova, let's say you go up large in that game, well, you could put Blake Ruffin in, Ben Perry. If someone gets hurt, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen, but you can rotate other players in. So you got three legitimate guys that I trust. Like theoretically, if say, okay, one of these guys has to start a specific game, I would trust all three of these players. Of course, Antonio Watts, I think, is the best of the three, and he's an all ACC caliber guy. I think he's an NFL linebacker. Like the potential is off the charts. And I think he's going to be playing on Sundays beginning next season in 2027. But you've also got some really solid depth pieces with Blake Ruffin, who's making the transition from traditional safety to the star, and Ben Perry, who spent his first 4 seasons in the Ville, went to UCLA, and now is coming back for his final season of college eligibility. How much will he play in 2026? Well, I think that that's going to be a position that you watch very closely in fall camp. Those practices start coming up in less than 2 weeks. I think it's August 6th, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong there, but the linebacker position, ton of potential, very talented, both projected starters and quality depth. That's going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.